Is the Surron Ultra Bee reliable? This is one of, if not the first Surron Ultra Bee Black Carbon Edition to come into the USA. I got this bike approximately a year and a half ago, and I'll tell you what, it was beautiful when it came out of the box. Let's just take a second to appreciate what this once looked like. It's almost kind of upsetting how good this bike looked when I first got it compared to what it does now, but this bike has been through the absolute ringer. On my last ride, I got it up to 1,000 miles, and I know you're thinking, Brett, you've had this bike for a year and a half. 1,000 miles is not that much, and for the most part, you're right, but this bike has been dedicated to aggressive to hard enduro riding, so it's been through the most abusive terrain that you can put it on. I also happen to ride two other Ultra Bees, one of which is set up for trail, and the other one is set up for motocross. Now you're probably wondering why both of these bikes are blurred out. That's because there's something very exciting coming for the Ultra Bee that I have yet to be able to announce, but it's coming very, very soon, so keep your eyes peeled for that. The other bike, the track bike specifically, I've gone and completely done an entire build that I'm very excited to show you guys. But time's not right yet. Need to finish it, and then once I do, you guys are gonna be in for a treat because this bike is so sick. I bring up these other two bikes purely to show you guys that I've got a lot of time on the Ultra Bee chassis. I understand it very well. I can ride it very confidently and comfortably, hence why this bike has been so abused in hard enduro situations over the last 1,000 miles. So let's get back to my thoughts on the reliability of a Surron Ultra Bee. I'm sure that you can see it from a distance just how road rash and abused this bike is, but let's actually show you up close just how much damage this bike has sustained over the last year and a half. Yeah, it's definitely not as pretty as it once was, but I have never once questioned the reliability of this bike. It has never done anything out of the ordinary to me. It turns on every time, throttle works right every time. The functionality of the bike as a whole has not changed since the day that I got it. So the actual powertrain, the battery, the motor, and the controller, I'm very, very impressed by what Surron did on a first generation bike coming to the market. They just came out with a second generation of this bike as well, and all that they had to change was purely in the motor. And to be honest, I don't know why they did change anything in the motor because I have not had any reliability issues with this in the first place. Now, I do know that they made the motor easier to work on, which is very nice from a mechanical standpoint. But the fact that I've had this bike as long as I have, put it through what it's gone through, and I haven't had to work on the powertrain at all, just speaks load on how impressive this bike can be. Now, although this bike has been beat up a lot, I do take care of my machines. And there is general maintenance that you need to do to every dirt bike that you own to ensure that it's working properly. So I always go through every single bolt, make sure that the bolts that need to be Loctited are Loctited, they haven't come loose. I'm very particular about my suspension setup, which is why there's an EXT on the rear and a tuned fork in the front. But beyond that, you also need to make sure that the torque of the pinch bolts, the torque of the wheel, all of the torque specs meet Surron's standard of what they expect on this bike. It helps it perform and function correctly, which is ultimately the entire reason this bike has made it to what it has. Now, in terms of the drivetrain on this bike, Surron Ultra Bees have got a jack shaft. It's run off of a belt. The jack shaft carries over to a chain. That chain goes back to the sprocket and drives the wheel. The belt is usually an item that wears pretty quickly on bikes like the Light Bee or E-Ride Pros or just any bike that's got a belt, the Ultra Bee has got a really thick, really nice belt, and I actually have not had to change it at all this entire time. So I've checked it quite often just to make sure that it's good, make sure that my tension on the belt's the same, but for the most part, I haven't even had to change the belt on this. That's how good these bikes can be. So bolt checking is really a majority of the maintenance that you have to do on electric dirt bikes, aside from tensioning the chain correctly, making sure there's a good amount of slack within your chain. That's very important as well. Chains stretch over time, so you want to make sure that the alignment of your wheel and your chain tension is always in a good place. But really, other than that, it does not take much maintenance to keep these bikes running right. The only other thing that I would say that I do pretty consistently is I'll pull the suspension off of my bike and I will re-grease the areas that need to be greased. So my linkage and my bolts that pass through the linkage, those get the appropriate grease on them. My front and rear axles get grease on them. My jack shaft axle and the bearings within the jack shaft, those get greased quite regularly, as well as the bearings underneath my headset for my fork. If you keep the grease correct, if you keep your bolts tight, if you keep your chain tension good, that is all the maintenance that these bikes need. Now, if you look at the gas world, you can pretty much triple the amount of maintenance that a gas bike needs to run correctly the way that this bike has. So I'm a super big fan of how much seat time I've been able to get on an electric bike with doing just the bare basics of maintenance that is required to ride these. Now, this being a first generation Surron Ultra Bee, I really wanted to test how durable it is, and that is the main reason that you've not seen me take preventative measures to protecting my frame. I pretty much kept it as the bike was out of the box and went and rallied it as hard as I could for a year and a half, and I'm really impressed by the manufacturer quality on it. Now, there's a lot of things you can do to get your bike to not look like this after a year and a half, like get a graphics kit on the bike, customize it to be your own, but it serves a dual purpose. It really protects your plastics, your frame, anywhere that there could be contact. A graphics kit goes a long ways, so I would highly suggest doing that. You can also get actual frame protection pieces now. This company, Artec, came out with a swing arm protector for the Ultra Bee, as well as a frame guard for where your boots pinch, and putting these on the bike immediately would have gone such a long ways in keeping this bike pristine. There's all sorts of disc guards you can put on and protective bits. The side-by-side skid plate has been amazing at deflecting rocks. All in all, if I would have taken preventative measures before I got this bike, it would look 100 times better than it does right now. But this is the abuse that it can go through, and I've got no question that I'm gonna be able to ride this bike for a long time to come. So let me know what you guys think. I love the Surron Ultra Bee. I've been very impressed by this bike. I love where the aftermarket's at with it, being able to build it into whatever you want it to be. The Surron Ultra Bee has done awesome for me over the last 1,000 miles. I'm excited to keep on riding it, and we'll see if I can give you a 2,000 mile update soon.